Hi, I'm Trish. Welcome to the Gig House Kitchen. Today we're going to make a delicious Victoria sandwich cake. Before we start, we need to prep a couple of things. I'm going to cook my sponges in my Aga, but you would need to light your oven. So if it's gas, it's mark 6, and if it's electric fan, it's 180 degrees centigrade. The second thing we need to do is to prepare the tins. Here I have 2 Victoria sandwich cake tins, which are 8 inches across in diameter or 20 centimetres. I have here some greaseproof paper, which I am going to fold in half. And then what I'm going to do is use the tins as a template, and with a lead pencil rather than a biro, I am going to draw around the tins a nice big circle. And then what I'm going to do is get a nice sharp set of kitchen scissors, and I am going to cut out the circles 2 at a time. Here we go. Right, we don't need this bit here. So I've got the 2 circles here, and I'm going to take each of the tins. Here I've got some soft margarine and a little bit of greaseproof paper, and I'm going to use this to grease each tin. Now, don't use oil, because oil actually, over a period of time in the heat of an oven, can actually damage your tins. So margarine won't do that. Once I've greased that really well, I'm going to get my first circle and put it in. Don't worry if it's not quite cut to size, because it's really the middle of the Victoria sandwich cake that sticks. So as long as the middle has greaseproof paper underneath it, then the cake should release, no trouble at all. I'm going to move on to the second one. Again, grease it really well. Take the second greaseproof paper circle and grease that really well. And that means that both tins are prepared. So I'm going to just move these out of the way. Right, here I have a set of Skittles and 4 large free-range eggs. What we're going to do now is weigh the 4 eggs in their shells on the scales. Now, eggs are like people, they all weigh a different weight. These 4 weigh 268 grams, so that is the amount that we're going to use now for the rest of the ingredients. The second ingredient we're going to use is self-raising flour, the same weight as the eggs, 268 grams. Now, self-raising flour has baking powder already added to it, and obviously that's what we use for cakes because they need a really good rise. The third ingredient we're going to use is caster sugar, which is finer than granulated sugar, so obviously this will mix in really well. Again, the same weight as the eggs. And the fourth ingredient we're going to use is soft margarine from a tub, same weight as the eggs. And last but not least, here I have my vanilla extract. Use about a teaspoon of vanilla extract. So now we're ready to mix the sponge. Right, here I have a medium-sized metal mixing bowl and a metal sieve. Right, first thing we're going to start with is the self-raising flour, and we're going to sieve it into the bowl to add a little bit extra air. Okay, now when you sieve, you can either bang it against the edge of the bowl, or as I like to, bang it against your hand. Now you shouldn't have any lumps, but if you do, then obviously just put your hand in and break them up. Sieved and ready. Right, the second ingredient we're going to put in is the caster sugar. Obviously we don't sieve that, so we're just going to literally put it in. And the next ingredient is going to be the softened soft tub margarine. Lastly, we have the 4 eggs. Now normally I would break these eggs into a bowl and smell each one, but I know that they're good eggs because I've just had one. So here we go. We're just going to put them straight in. But make sure you get your eggs from a reputable source. And if you're at all worried, obviously break each one into a separate bowl. Otherwise you're going to ruin your whole mix. Okay. The final ingredient is the vanilla essence. So this is roughly 1 teaspoon or 5 mils. All our ingredients are now in our bowl. You could use a wooden spoon. However, what I like to do is use an electric hand whisk. And then what I'm going to do is actually put a tea towel folded up underneath to stop it moving about. Right, I'm going to put it on its highest speed, but I'm actually going to put the blades on the base of the bowl. This is so the flour doesn't come shooting out and you get a flour facial. So off we go. I hope nobody's got headphones on at this stage. I'm going to keep mixing it till it's really lovely and almost creamy. I would mix this for 1 or 2 minutes. It does depend how warm the kitchen is and how soft your margarine was before you put it in, obviously. Okay. Using an electric whisk will mean that you'll have a lighter sponge than if you use a wooden spoon. What I'm going to do now is just run the mixer at a very low speed out of the mixture. That will get rid of any excess sponge on there, so we don't want to waste any. And then I'm just going to click the button here and out come the blades, which will go to wash up. And there you have a lovely creamy mixture ready to go into its tins. So we'll just move this lovely mixture out of the way and bring back the 2 cake tins that we prepared earlier. And we're just going to take the mixture and put in a tablespoon in each one. I think it's going to be lovely and light when it's baked. I'm putting in equal amounts into each tin, a tablespoon at a time. It's important that they're even. You don't want one layer to be thick and one layer to be thin. It gives a better presentation if both the cakes are even. And then I'm going to push the mixture into the sides of the tin and level it off. And the same with the other one. And now, my favourite part, I'm going to just drop the tins to make sure there's no air bubbles. Both our cakes are now ready for the oven. Okay, how do you tell if they're done? Well, the first thing is they should be a nice golden brown colour and they should have come slightly away from the edge of the tin. And another test you can do is actually just press them in the middle and they should come back springy. If they're eggy in the middle, then obviously they're not cooked, so you'd have to put them back for a little bit longer. If you really aren't sure if they're cooked, then you can get a skewer and put it in and see if it comes out clean. But really, just the fact that they're golden brown, springy and away from the edge is good enough for me. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn them out and show you what they look like after they've baked. So the tin might be a little bit warm still, so I'll just get my oven glove and I'm going to get a palette knife and literally very carefully run it around the edge, trying not to damage the cake. Once it's loosened, I'm going to take the cake off and put the cooling rack over the top of the cake and then just literally turn it over. If you bang the base, the lid should just come off. Now this is the magic of the grease-proof paper and greasing it well. You just pull it and then you've got an absolutely beautiful, perfect Victoria sandwich cake. Now I'm going to do exactly the same with this other one and then I'm going to get on to showing you how to make the buttercream. First thing we need is a metal bowl and a wooden spoon and I'm going to show you the ingredients that we're going to use. There's 3. The first ingredient we've got is unsalted butter, which we've had at room temperature. And the second ingredient we've got is icing sugar, which has been sieved, so there's no lumps in it. And lastly, vanilla essence. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is put the unsalted butter in my mixing bowl, and I'm going to put in a teaspoon or 5 mils of the vanilla extract or the vanilla essence, whichever you've got. Put this over here, and I'm going to start mixing until this is lovely and creamy and almost liquidy. So that will make it much easier for the icing sugar to go in. And once you've got it going and it's lovely and creamy, we're going to add the icing sugar half at a time. This is lovely and well sieved. It's always good to buy good quality icing sugar because it does make a difference. Okay, so that's half. Icing sugar is quite a funny thing. It tends not to like to stay in the bowl. If anybody knows of a good way of keeping icing sugar in a bowl, please let me know. Once we've got it going, what we can do to dampen the icing sugar slightly and to make the buttercream easier is put in just a teaspoonful of cold water. Some people put milk in, but I find if you put a teaspoonful of milk in, then you've got to worry about keeping milk in a tin. Now that's made the icing sugar go into the butter very easily. The consistency is so important. You want it lovely and light and creamy. So you do need a little bit of elbow grease. Okay, I'm going to put the other half in. This amount is enough to put a thin layer on the top of the Victoria sandwich cake and a layer in the middle of the Victoria sandwich cake. There's nothing worse than a dry Victoria sandwich cake. Here we go. If you're finding that the icing sugar is going to go everywhere, you can put in a little bit more water to make it go together again. But I'm finding that this is coming together very easily. If you find it's a little bit too loose, what you can do is add a little bit more icing sugar. So I've always got a little bit of extra sieved icing sugar in the bowl just in case. Here we go. Now I'm going to give this a really, really good beat. Make it lovely and creamy, and just before I finish I'm just going to get a teaspoon. I'm just pinching the one out of the water, and I'm just going to taste it to see if I've got enough vanilla extract. That is lovely, so that's perfect. That's ready to use. I'm going to keep it at room temperature because obviously I don't want it to harden, and it will when it gets cool. So I'm going to put this over here now, and now I'm going to see if the cakes are ready. The cakes are now cool, so we're ready to assemble. Alright, I have here a piece of foil which I have folded, and I will explain why I've done that later. I have here our lovely buttercream that I've just made, and I'm going to give that a really, really good whip so that it's lovely light consistency. And lastly, I've got some warmed jam just at room temperature so that it spreads evenly. This is raspberry, which is traditional for a Victoria sandwich cake. First thing I'm going to do is take the base of the cake. It came out of the tin that way, and I've turned it back up that way. I'm going to put it onto the foil, making sure I can lift it up. That's giving you a clue of why I'm doing it, so I can lift it up. Right, first thing I'm going to do with the buttercream is put half of it on the top there, and keeping the other half for the top of that. This is the middle. So we're going to spread it quite close to the edge. You can see it's beautifully creamy and very yummy tasting. So I'm going to put this over here, and I'm going to bring over the second layer. I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to put the jam on. Jam goes to nothing. You might think you've got masses of it, but in actual fact, once it's spread out, there isn't a lot of it. I've got about 4 tablespoons of raspberry jam there, and I'm going to put the rest on, I think. There's nothing worse than a dry sponge. Now you can see I've used 2 different palette knives because I don't want the jam on the buttercream, and I don't want the buttercream on the jam. Right, so I'm going to very, very carefully now tip this over onto the middle buttercream, and this is where you've actually got to be very gentle because you don't want it oozing out. So I'm going to put buttercream on top in little dollops. I'm going to put 1 dollop there, 1 dollop there, 1 dollop there, 1 dollop there. So I'm in the middle. I'm not going to waste any of this really, really gorgeous buttercream, so I'm going to scrape it all out. Okay. Try not to press too hard on the cake. In fact, I'm going to use my hand like this and hold on to it to take some of the weight out. And I'm just literally going to spread it all over the cake. Again, I'm going to move over here, lift it slightly so I'm taking some of the weight. If you're finding buttercream isn't spreading very easily, you can always wash a knife and then put it under boiling water, dry it, and then the heat of the knife will help the buttercream spread. I'm finding that this is going on very, very easily. Now it's meant to be sort of very rustic. This is really to give to people when they come for coffee or whatever. Living in North Norfolk, there's always somebody visiting and wanting a lovely piece of cake and a cup of coffee. So this is a great cake. It can last a couple of weeks easily. Now what I'm going to do is just fluff it up slightly, and that's basically it. So that is actually about 12 portions, and I'm talking good sized portions as well. Why have we put it on the foil container? Well, I have a tin here. Make sure it's a very deep one, because as you can see it's a very deep cake. And I'm going to literally lift it up and put it into the tin. And then I'm going to put the lid on. I'm going to store it in the tin. When people come, save messing about trying to cut it in the tin, I can just lift it out. I could put it onto a nice plate, or I could just cut it on the work surface or a chopping board. I have to say that this cake is actually even better if it's left a day. It sort of softens, and if you've got a crust on the top when you've baked it, that will all soften. Right, there we have it. Delicious Victoria sandwich cake, Norfolk style. We hope you enjoyed being at the Gig House Kitchen, because we certainly enjoyed having you. Next week we'll be making bread, so see you then.